The heavy oak doors of Jefferson County Courthouse swung open with a haunting creak that made every head turn. Officer Mike Thompson walked through, his polished boots echoing against the marble floor, and beside him, connected by a standard-issue leather leash, walked Rex, a magnificent German shepherd whose black and tan coat gleamed under the fluorescent lights. The dog moved with military precision, his shoulders squared, his head held high, completely unaware that today might be his last. The gallery was packed beyond capacity. People stood shoulder to shoulder along the back wall, their faces a mixture of anger, sympathy, and morbid curiosity. Local news cameras lined the rear of the courtroom, their red recording lights blinking like hungry eyes. This wasn't just another case. This had become a media sensation, a battle that had divided the entire community down the middle. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Margaret Chen," the bailiff announced, his voice cutting through the murmured conversations. Everyone stood as Judge Chen entered, her black robes flowing behind her like dark water. She was a woman in her late 50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun and sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. She'd been on the bench for 23 years and had seen it all, or so she thought. But today's case was different. Today, she would decide whether a decorated police dog lived or died. "Be seated," Judge Chen said, settling into her high-backed leather chair. The room filled with the sound of shuffling bodies and creaking benches. On the left side of the courtroom sat James Mitchell, the plaintiff, his arm dramatically bandaged and suspended in a sling. His face bore the carefully practiced expression of a victim, eyes downcast, lips pressed in a thin line of suffering. Beside him sat his attorney, Marcus Delgado, a man who wore a $3,000 suit and an even more expensive smile. Delgado had built his career on high-profile cases, and he knew how to work a jury. On the right side, Officer Thompson sat ramrod straight, one hand resting protectively on Rex's shoulder. The dog sat in perfect position, back straight, ears alert, eyes forward. Years of training had taught Rex to remain calm in any situation, but Thompson could feel the slightest tremor running through his partner's body. Dogs sensed tension, and the courtroom was electric with it. Behind Thompson, the gallery was filled with fellow officers in dress uniform, their faces grim. These were men and women who'd worked alongside Rex, who'd seen him locate missing children, sniff out hidden drugs, and protect his human partners without hesitation. To them, this trial was an insult, a betrayal of everything Rex represented. On the other side, Mitchell's family occupied the front row. His mother dabbed at her eyes with a crumpled tissue, while his sister glared daggers at Rex, whispering loudly enough for everyone to hear. "That monster should be put down." "Mr. Delgado, you may begin," Judge Chen said, her voice neutral but her eyes watchful. Delgado rose smoothly, buttoning his suit jacket with a practiced motion. He walked to the center of the courtroom, positioning himself where both the judge and jury could see him clearly. "Your Honor, members of the jury, what we have here is a clear case of excessive force resulting in severe bodily harm." He paused for effect, letting his words sink in. "My client, James Mitchell, bears permanent scars, both physical and psychological, from an unprovoked attack by a supposedly trained police animal." Thompson's jaw clenched, but he remained silent. Rex's ear twitched slightly, the only sign that the dog had heard his name spoken with such contempt. Delgado approached the evidence table and lifted a large manila folder. "These photographs show the extent of Mr. Mitchell's injuries." He began passing glossy images to the jury, each one met with visible grimaces and gasps. Multiple puncture wounds, deep tissue damage, severed tendons, psychological trauma that will require years of therapy. His voice rose with each statement, building toward a crescendo. "Ladies and gentlemen, we don't allow human officers to use this level of force without justification. Why should we allow an animal to do so?" The prosecution's attorney, a young woman named Sarah Chen, no relation to the judge, rose to object. "Your Honor, the defendant is mischaracterizing the events leading to. This animal is a menace. Delgado suddenly shouted, slamming his fist on the defendant's table with a crack that made several jurors jump. "Look at these wounds. Look at them." He thrust the photographs toward the jury box, his face flushed with manufactured outrage. This was not a controlled response. This was a vicious mauling by a beast that has no place in civilized society. Rex remained perfectly still, but his eyes tracked Delgado's movements with the focused intensity of a predator. Thompson's hand tightened protectively on his partner's collar. Outside the courthouse, the sound of chanting penetrated the thick walls. "Justice for James! Put it down! Put it down!" Counter-protesters responded with their own chants. "Save Rex! Hero dog! Hero dog!" The noise created an eerie backdrop to the proceedings, a reminder that this verdict would ripple far beyond this courtroom. Judge Chen's gavel cracked like thunder against the bench. "Order! I will have order in this court." The noise died down, but the tension remained thick enough to choke on. "Mr. Delgado, contain your theatrics or I'll hold you in contempt." Delgado smiled apologetically, but his eyes glinted with satisfaction. He'd made his point. "My apologies, Your Honor. I'm simply passionate about protecting innocent citizens from dangerous animals." He turned back to the jury. "The defense will try to tell you that Rex is a hero. They'll parade his service record before you like a badge of honor. But I ask you this: how many incidents went unreported? How many times did this dog cross the line? But the victims were too afraid to come forward against the police." The officers in the gallery stirred angrily, but a sharp look from Judge Chen kept them in their seats. "Your Honor," Delgado continued, his voice dropping to a somber tone, "I have expert testimony from 3 animal behaviorists who will testify that once a dog attacks a human without provocation, the likelihood of repeat incidents increases exponentially. For the safety of our community, for the protection of innocent people like my client, Rex must be humanely euthanized." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Thompson felt his heart drop into his stomach. Rex had just hours before the decision would be made, hours before his loyal partner, his friend, the dog who'd saved countless lives, would be taken away and put down like a rabid animal. Sarah Chen stood quickly. "Your Honor, the defense is ready to present evidence that will completely contradict Mr. Delgado's inflammatory characterization of events. We have body camera footage, witness testimony, and I have one more witness," a voice called from the back of the courtroom. Every head turned. Standing in the doorway was Maria Rodriguez, a petite woman in her mid-30s with determined eyes. Beside her, holding her hand tightly, was a small girl with dark braids and enormous brown eyes that were fixed intently on Rex. Judge Chen leaned forward, her interest piqued. "And who might this witness be?" Maria walked down the aisle, her daughter's small hand clasped in hers. "Your Honor, my name is Maria Rodriguez, and this is my daughter, Emma. She has something this court needs to hear, something that will change everything you think you know about Rex." The courtroom erupted in confused whispers. Delgado's confident expression faltered for just a moment. Officer Thompson looked up, recognizing Emma immediately, hope flickering in his eyes for the first time that day. Judge Chen studied the young girl thoughtfully, then made her decision. "Very well, Ms. Rodriguez, but understand, this court doesn't take the testimony of children lightly. Are you certain your daughter is prepared for this?" Emma stepped forward, her voice small but clear. "I'm ready, Your Honor. Rex saved my life and now I'm going to save his." The words hung in the air as the courtroom held its collective breath, waiting to see how a little girl could possibly change the fate of a condemned police dog. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Riverside Park as the Rodriguez family spread their checkered blanket beneath an ancient oak tree. It was Emma's 5th birthday, and Maria had promised her daughter a perfect day, a picnic by the river, cake with pink frosting, and all the time in the world to play in her favorite park. "Mama, can I go to the playground?" Emma asked, her eyes bright with excitement as she clutched her new stuffed rabbit. Maria glanced at the playground 50 yards away, easily visible from their picnic spot. "Stay where I can see you, Mija, and don't go near the woods." "I won't," Emma promised, already running toward the swings, her pink dress fluttering behind her like butterfly wings. Maria watched her daughter play, feeling that warm contentment that comes from seeing your child purely happy. Her husband, Carlos, was grilling hamburgers on a small portable grill, humming off-key to a song on the radio. It was perfect. It was safe. It was home. But perfection has a way of shattering in an instant. Maria looked down to check her phone, just for a moment, just to see a text from her sister. When she looked up 30 seconds later, the swings were empty. Emma's stuffed rabbit lay abandoned in the sand. "Emma," Maria called, standing up, her voice still calm. "Children wander. They chase butterflies or interesting bugs. Emma, honey, where are you?" No answer. "Emma," Maria's voice rose, an edge of panic creeping in. She ran to the playground, her eyes scanning every corner, every hiding spot. The slide was empty. The monkey bars were bare. Carlos joined her, his face already pale. "She was just here," Maria whispered, her hands beginning to shake. "She was right here." They searched frantically, behind the bathrooms, around the pavilion, near the parking lot. Other families joined in, calling Emma's name until it echoed across the park like a desperate prayer. But there was no response, nothing but the mocking whisper of wind through the trees. By the time the sun touched the horizon, Riverside Park had transformed into a scene of organized chaos. Police cars lined the access road, their lights painting everything in alternating shades of red and blue. Officers moved through the crowd, asking questions, taking statements, organizing search parties. And in the center of it all stood Maria Rodriguez, her world crumbling around her. "We need a description," a female officer said gently, her notepad ready. "What was she wearing?" "Pink dress," Maria stammered, her voice hollow. "White sandals, she has. She has a small birthmark on her left shoulder shaped like a heart. She's 5. She just turned 5 today." The last words came out as a sob. Officer Mike Thompson arrived at 6:47 p.m., his patrol car pulling up beside the command center. In the back seat, secured in his K9 transport crate, was Rex. The German Shepherd had been working since dawn, a drug bust at the high school, a demonstration at the community center. But when dispatch called about a missing child, Thompson didn't hesitate. "We've got a child, 5 years old, missing for approximately 2 hours, the incident commander briefed him. Parents were having a picnic, turned away for less than a minute. No signs of abduction, but the woods border the park on 3 sides and there's the river to the north." Thompson felt his stomach tighten. The woods were dense, full of ravines and hidden dangers. The river was worse, fast-moving, deep and merciless. Every minute counted. "I need something with her scent," Thompson said, releasing Rex from the vehicle. The dog emerged, instantly alert, his body language shifting from relaxed to mission-ready in a heartbeat. Maria thrust Emma's stuffed rabbit toward him, her hands trembling so badly she nearly dropped it. "Please," she whispered, "please find my baby." Thompson knelt down, holding the rabbit to Rex's nose. "Such, Rex, such." The German command for search sent Rex into immediate action. His nose worked the fabric, processing the scent, committing it to memory. Then his head lifted, swiveling as he tested the air. And he was off. Rex pulled Thompson toward the eastern edge of the park, away from the river, a direction no one had thoroughly searched because it led deeper into the woods. The dog moved with purpose, his nose alternating between ground and air, reading a story written in molecules and trace elements that humans could never perceive. They plunged into the forest as darkness swallowed the last of the daylight. Thompson switched on his high-powered flashlight, the beam cutting through shadows that seemed to reach for them with twisted branches. Behind them, other officers followed, but Rex set a brutal pace. The dog had caught something, a trail that grew stronger with each passing minute. Good boy Rex, show me, where is she? Branches clawed at Thompson's uniform. His boots slipped on moss-covered rocks. They'd been searching for 40 minutes, moving deeper into terrain that grew increasingly treacherous. A child alone out here in the dark, in the cold. Thompson forced himself not to think about the statistics, about how quickly hypothermia could set in, about the cliffs and the ravines and the 100 ways a little girl could come to harm. Rex suddenly veered left, scrambling down an embankment toward an old railway bridge that hadn't been used in decades. The structure loomed out of the darkness like a skeletal monster, its rusted metal beams groaning in the wind. Thompson's light swept across the area, nothing but shadows and decay. But Rex wasn't deterred. The dog ducked under the bridge, disappearing into the deeper darkness beneath the structure. And then Thompson heard it, a sound that made his blood run cold and his heart soar simultaneously. A bark, sharp, insistent, urgent. Rex's "I found it" bark. Thompson scrambled down the embankment, his radio already at his lips. "Dispatch, this is K9 Unit 7. I think we've got her. Location is the old railway bridge, eastern sector. Send medical immediately." He ducked under the bridge, his flashlight beam sweeping across, and there she was. Emma Rodriguez lay curled in a tiny ball against the cold concrete support, her pink dress torn and dirty, her lips tinged blue. But she wasn't alone. Rex had positioned himself around her small body, his larger form creating a protective barrier against the wind. The dog's body heat radiated against the child, and incredibly, impossibly, Emma's small arm was draped over Rex's neck. "Emma," Thompson called softly, not wanting to startle her. The girl's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. She looked at Rex, then at Thompson, then back at Rex. And instead of fear, instead of the terror Thompson expected to see, Emma's face crumpled with relief. "The doggy found me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I was so cold, but he came. He kept me warm." Thompson felt tears sting his eyes as he radioed their position and carefully approached. Rex remained perfectly still, letting the child cling to him, understanding with that mysterious canine intuition that this small human needed him. Medical personnel arrived within minutes, scrambling down the embankment with blankets and equipment. Emma's parents were right behind them, Maria's screams of relief echoing through the night as she saw her daughter alive. "Emma, oh God, Emma!" Maria collapsed beside her daughter, pulling her into a fierce embrace while simultaneously reaching out to touch Rex, her hands shaking. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." The paramedics examined Emma carefully. Hypothermia, mild dehydration, scratches and bruises, but alive. Miraculously, wonderfully alive. They wrapped her in thermal blankets, but Emma fought them, reaching back toward Rex. "I want the doggy," she insisted, her small voice stronger now. "He saved me, Mama. He found me in the dark and he stayed. He's a good boy." Thompson knelt beside her, Rex sitting at perfect attention. "His name is Rex, sweetheart, and you're right, he's the very best boy." Emma's small hand reached out, touching Rex's face with the gentle reverence children reserve for their heroes. "Good boy, Rex," she whispered. "You're my good boy." Rex's tail wagged once, a slow, dignified acknowledgement, and he gently licked Emma's hand. As they carried Emma up the embankment toward the waiting ambulance, Thompson watched the girl refuse to stop looking back at Rex, her eyes locked on the dog who had saved her life. He had no way of knowing that 2 years later, Emma would return the favor. But on that night, as police officers congratulated each other and Maria Rodriguez wept tears of joy, one thing was absolutely certain. Rex wasn't just a police dog. He was a hero. And Emma Rodriguez would never, ever forget what he'd done for her. The emergency dispatch came through at 2:47 a.m., shattering the quiet of Officer Mike Thompson's night patrol. "All units, we have a 211 in progress at Westside Warehouse District. Suspect is armed and dangerous. James Mitchell, wanted for armed robbery and assault. Consider him extremely dangerous." Thompson's hand instinctively went to Rex in the back seat. The German Shepherd was already alert, sensing his handler's tension through that mysterious connection that bonded them. "Looks like we're up, partner," Thompson muttered, flipping on his sirens and speeding toward the industrial sector on the city's east side. By the time they arrived, the scene was already chaotic. 6 patrol cars had formed a perimeter around Warehouse 17, their headlights cutting through the darkness like searchlights. Mitchell had barricaded himself inside after a high-speed chase that had ended when his stolen vehicle crashed into a chain-link fence. Now he was cornered, desperate, and according to witnesses, heavily armed. "We've got a problem," Lieutenant Sarah Morrison said as Thompson approached, Rex heeling perfectly at his side. "Mitchell's got a Glock 9 and he's fired 3 shots already, once at pursuing officers, twice into the air when we tried to negotiate. He's unstable, possibly high, and he's made it clear he's not going back to prison." Thompson surveyed the warehouse, a sprawling brick structure with multiple entry points, broken windows, and decades' worth of abandoned equipment providing countless hiding spots. It was a tactical nightmare. "Gas him out," suggested another officer. Morrison shook her head. "Negative, there's old chemical storage in there. One spark and the whole place could go up. We need to go in smart and fast." She turned to Thompson. "That's where you come in. Rex can locate him without putting more officers at risk." Thompson nodded, his stomach tightening. This was what they trained for, what Rex had been bred and prepared for his entire life. But something felt wrong. The air was too still, the night too quiet. He pushed the feeling aside. "Rex is ready when you are." They breached the building at 3:15 a.m. Thompson, Rex, and 4 tactical officers entered through the main loading dock, their weapons drawn, their movements coordinated and silent. Inside, the warehouse was a maze of shadows and rusted machinery. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness. Metal creaked and groaned like the building itself was breathing. "Such, Rex," Thompson commanded softly. "Such." Rex's nose went to work immediately, filtering through the overwhelming sense of oil, rust, chemicals, and decay to find the one smell that mattered: human fear, sweat, and adrenaline. The dog moved forward with Thompson right behind him, the other officers fanning out to cover potential escape routes. They moved deeper into the warehouse, past toppled shelving units and ancient forklifts frozen in decay. Rex's body language changed subtly, ears forward, steps more deliberate, a slight tremor of excitement running through his muscles. He'd found something. The German Shepherd led them to the rear section where massive steel drums were stacked like industrial dominoes. Rex's nose pointed toward a gap between 2 columns of drums, and Thompson saw it, a shadow that didn't belong, a shape that was too solid, too human. "James Mitchell, police, come out with your hands visible," Thompson shouted, his weapon trained on the position. The response was a gunshot that ricocheted off metal with a sound like a scream. Officers dove for cover. Thompson felt the bullet pass close enough to disturb the air beside his head. "Rex Zuruk," Thompson commanded, trying to call Rex back to get his partner to safety. But Rex had already seen what Thompson hadn't. Mitchell emerging from behind the drums, his weapon raised, not toward Thompson but toward Officer Jennifer Park, who'd been covering the eastern flank. She was exposed, vulnerable, with no cover between her and Mitchell's gun. What happened next occurred in the space between heartbeats. Rex launched himself forward with the devastating speed that made German Shepherds elite police dogs. Mitchell swung his gun toward the approaching dog, his finger tightening on the trigger. The shot went wide as 90 pounds of trained canine muscle hit him center mass, Rex's jaws clamping onto Mitchell's gun arm exactly as he'd been trained, hard enough to neutralize the threat, controlled enough to avoid lethal damage. Mitchell screamed, dropping the weapon. He tried to shake Rex off, stumbling backward against the steel drums. The dog held on, his training overriding the man's panicked flailing. Officers rushed in, shouting commands, moving to secure the scene. Rex O's, Thompson commanded the release command. Rex immediately let go, stepping back but maintaining his alert posture, ready to engage again if Mitchell posed a continued threat. Officers swarmed Mitchell, forcing him to the ground, cuffing his hands behind his back while he screamed about his arm, about police brutality, about how he was going to sue everyone. The threat was over. Mitchell was secured. Officer Park was safe. It was a textbook K-9 deployment. Rex had responded to an armed threat and neutralized it with appropriate force, likely saving Park's life in the process. But as the adrenaline faded and the lights came on, Thompson saw Mitchell's arm, deep puncture wounds, blood seeping through his sleeve, damage that looked worse than it probably was but would photograph spectacularly. "My arm, that monster tore my arm off," Mitchell shrieked, his voice carrying that particular quality of a career criminal who just found his golden ticket. "I wasn't doing nothing. I was surrendering. You all saw it. That vicious dog attacked me for no reason." Thompson's stomach dropped. He'd seen this before, suspects who tried to flip the narrative, who turned officer-involved incidents into lawsuits and complaints. But Rex had been perfect. Rex had done exactly what he was trained to do, exactly what saved Officer Park's life. "Weapon," Thompson said firmly, pointing to the Glock 9 lying 3 feet from Mitchell. "You pointed a loaded weapon at Officer Park." Rex responded to an active threat. "I dropped it. I was giving up," Mitchell insisted, his voice gaining strength as he realized his angle. "That dog attacked me after I surrendered." "That's bullshit and you know it," Officer Park interjected, her face flushed with anger and residual fear. "You had your gun aimed at my head. Rex saved my life." But Mitchell just smiled, a cold, calculating expression that sent chills down Thompson's spine. "Where's your body camera footage? You got footage of me aiming at anyone? Because I'm pretty sure all you got is footage of that beast tearing into an unarmed man." Thompson's hand instinctively checked his body camera, and his blood ran cold. The red recording light was off. The camera had been damaged during the chase earlier that night, something he'd meant to replace but hadn't gotten around to in the chaos of the pursuit. Standard protocol was to have a backup, but in the heat of the moment, he'd forgotten. "Building security cameras," Lieutenant Morrison said firmly. "Every moment is recorded." Mitchell's smile widened. "Shame about that electrical problem earlier. Bet those cameras went out right around the same time as all the power in this sector. Funny how that happens." Over the following days, Thompson watched helplessly as the narrative shifted like sand beneath his feet. Mitchell hired Marcus Delgado, a lawyer famous for winning excessive force cases against police departments. The security footage that should have exonerated Rex mysteriously corrupted. Water damage, the building owner claimed, from old pipes that had burst weeks earlier. Witnesses who'd initially supported the police version of events suddenly became uncertain, their statements filled with "I'm not sure," and "it happened so fast." Delgado was good. He knew how to find the cracks in testimony, how to plant seeds of doubt, how to turn a hero into a villain. The photos of Mitchell's arm went viral on social media. Justice for James trended on Twitter. Activists who knew nothing about the case, who hadn't been there in that warehouse at 3 a.m. when Rex saved a police officer's life, demanded the dog be put down. The narrative became, "Vicious police dog mauls unarmed man during illegal arrest." News vans parked outside the police station. Protesters gathered with signs reading "Police dogs kill" and "End K-9 brutality." The police chief, facing public pressure and liability concerns, had no choice but to order an investigation. And then came the court order. Rex was to be evaluated for dangerous behavior, pending a hearing that would determine if he posed a threat to public safety. The unspoken reality hung over everything like a death sentence. If Rex was deemed dangerous, he would be euthanized. Thompson sat in his living room the night before the hearing, Rex's head resting on his knee, and felt hot tears track down his face. His partner, his friend, the dog who'd saved countless lives including Emma Rodriguez's, was going to die because a career criminal had learned how to game the system, and a slick lawyer knew how to spin a story. "I won't let them take you," Thompson whispered into Rex's fur. "I promise, partner, I'll fight for you." But as he said the words, he wondered if promises meant anything against lawyers, corrupted evidence, and public opinion that had already decided Rex was guilty. The perfect storm had arrived, and it was about to destroy everything. The courtroom had become a pressure cooker. For 3 grueling hours, Marcus Delgado had paraded witness after witness, each one carefully coached to paint Rex as an out-of-control weapon. An animal behavior expert with questionable credentials claimed German Shepherds were inherently aggressive. A doctor displayed Mitchell's X-rays on a large screen, narrating each fracture and tear with dramatic flair. Mitchell himself had taken the stand, his performance worthy of an Oscar, tears, trembling voice, the works. Officer Thompson felt his hope dying with each passing minute. Sarah Chen, the prosecution attorney, had fought valiantly, but the deck was stacked against them. The missing security footage was devastating. Without concrete proof that Mitchell had been armed and threatening, it became a matter of he said, she said, and Delgado was a master at creating reasonable doubt. Judge Margaret Chen called for a 15-minute recess. Thompson stood in the hallway, his hand buried in Rex's fur, the dog sitting calmly beside him despite the chaos. Fellow officers surrounded them, offering words of encouragement that felt hollow. They all knew how this was going to end. "Thompson," Lieutenant Morrison approached, her face grave. "Animal control is here. They've got the paperwork ready. If the judge rules against us." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Thompson closed his eyes, fighting back tears. Rex looked up at him, those intelligent brown eyes full of trust and loyalty. The dog had no idea his life hung in the balance. He just knew his handler was upset, and that was enough to make him press closer, offering comfort the only way he knew how. "Officer Thompson." He turned to find a woman standing nervously a few feet away. She was petite, probably in her mid-30s, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Beside her stood a young girl with enormous brown eyes and 2 braids tied with pink ribbons. It took Thompson a moment to recognize them, and when he did, his heart skipped a beat. "Mrs. Rodriguez, Emma." Maria Rodriguez nodded, gripping her daughter's hand tightly. "We heard about the trial, we saw the news, and Emma insisted we come." Thompson knelt down to Emma's level. The last time he'd seen her was 6 months ago at her school during a K-9 demonstration. She'd been so happy to see Rex, spending the entire assembly period sitting beside him, reading him stories from her favorite book. "Hi, Emma. You remember Rex?" Emma's face lit up despite the serious atmosphere. "Of course. He's my hero." She looked at Rex, and the German Shepherd's tail began to wag, a slow, happy motion that was the first sign of joy Thompson had seen from his partner all day. "Officer Thompson," Maria said, her voice urgent and low, "Emma told me what's happening. She said they want to hurt Rex. We can't let that happen. He saved my baby's life." "I appreciate you coming, Mrs. Rodriguez, but I don't think there's much." "I can help," Emma interrupted, her small voice fierce with determination. I can tell them Rex is good." Thompson felt his throat tighten. He looked at Sarah Chen, who had emerged from the courtroom and was watching the exchange with growing interest. "Sarah, this is Emma Rodriguez. Rex found her 2 years ago when she was lost in Riverside Park." Sarah's eyes widened. She knelt down beside Emma, her legal mind already racing. "Emma, honey, would you be willing to talk to the judge? To tell everyone about how Rex helped you?" Emma nodded emphatically. "Yes, I have to. They don't understand. Rex isn't mean. He's the best dog in the whole world." Maria looked uncertain. "She's only 8. Is it even allowed? Will they listen to a child?" "Judge Chen has discretion to hear any testimony she deems relevant," Sarah said, her voice gaining excitement. "This could be exactly what we need, a character witness who can show Rex's true nature, someone who experienced his gentleness firsthand." Delgado would hate it, Thompson thought, and that alone made it worth trying. When court reconvened, the atmosphere shifted immediately. Sarah Chen stood, her voice clear and confident. "Your Honor, the defense calls an additional witness, Emma Rodriguez." The courtroom erupted in confused murmurs. Delgado shot to his feet, his expensive suit creasing as he leaned forward aggressively. "Objection, Your Honor. This witness isn't on the approved list. We had no notification." "Your Honor," Sarah interrupted smoothly, "this witness only became available during recess. Her testimony is directly relevant to the defendant's character and temperament." "She's a child," Delgado protested, his composure cracking slightly. "This is highly irregular. The defense is clearly attempting to manipulate the jury's emotions with—" Judge Chen's gavel cracked once, sharp and final. "Mr. Delgado, I've sat on this bench for 23 years. I'm perfectly capable of determining what testimony is relevant to my courtroom." She leaned forward, studying Emma with those sharp, intelligent eyes. "Young lady, what's your name?" "Emma Rodriguez, Your Honor," Emma said, her voice small but steady. "And how old are you, Emma?" "8. I just turned 8 in September." Judge Chen nodded slowly. "And you have something you want to tell this court about Rex?" Emma nodded vigorously. "Yes, ma'am, he saved my life and he's good. He's so good." The sincerity in her voice was undeniable. Judge Chen looked at Delgado, whose face had gone slightly red. "Objection overruled. I'll allow the testimony." She turned back to Emma with a gentler expression. "Come on up here, sweetheart. Let's hear what you have to say." Maria squeezed Emma's hand one last time before releasing her. The courtroom fell completely silent as Emma walked down the aisle, her small shoes clicking on the marble floor with a rhythm that sounded impossibly loud. Every eye in the gallery followed her, reporters leaning forward, cameras focusing, jurors watching with expressions ranging from curiosity to sympathy. Rex's ears perked up the moment Emma started walking. He recognized her immediately, her scent, her gait, the particular sound of her voice. His tail began to wag faster, and he shifted slightly, wanting to go to his young friend but held in place by his training and Thompson's gentle hand on his collar. Emma climbed into the witness chair with help from the bailiff, who adjusted the microphone down to her height. Her feet dangled several inches above the floor, making her look even smaller and more vulnerable. But when she looked out at the courtroom, there was no fear in her eyes, only determination. Sarah Chen approached with a warm smile. "Emma, thank you for being here. I know this is scary." "I'm not scared," Emma said firmly. "Rex needs me, so I'm here." In the gallery, several people exchanged glances. Even some of Mitchell's supporters shifted uncomfortably. There was something about a child's conviction that cut through cynicism and legal maneuvering. Judge Chen leaned back in her chair, watching this small girl who had walked into her courtroom like a pint-sized warrior. She'd seen a lot in her years on the bench, but this was something different, something special. "Proceed, Ms. Chen," Judge Chen said quietly. Sarah nodded. "Emma, can you tell us about the day you met Rex?" Emma took a deep breath, her small hands gripping the arms of the witness chair. And then she began to speak, and as she did, the entire courtroom leaned in to listen to a story that would change everything. "I was 5 years old," Emma began, her voice growing stronger, "and it was my birthday. We were having a picnic and I got lost in the woods. It was so dark and I was so scared." The fate of a hero hung in the balance, resting on the words of a little girl who refused to let her friend die. Emma's voice filled the courtroom, small but unwavering, carrying a truth that no legal maneuvering could dismiss. "I was 5 years old and it was my birthday. We were at Riverside Park having a picnic and I saw a butterfly, a pretty yellow one. I followed it toward the trees because I wanted to see where it went." Sarah Chen stood a respectful distance away, letting Emma tell her story without interruption. The jury leaned forward, captivated. Even Delgado had gone quiet, recognizing that objecting now would make him look heartless. "I didn't mean to go far," Emma continued, her eyes distant as she remembered. "But the butterfly kept flying and I kept following, and then I couldn't see the playground anymore. I couldn't see my mama." Her voice cracked slightly. "I tried to go back, but everything looked the same. All the trees looked the same. I got more and more lost." Maria Rodriguez sat in the gallery, tears streaming down her face as she relived that nightmare. Beside her, Carlos wrapped his arm around his wife's shoulders. "What happened then, Emma?" Sarah asked gently. "It got dark, really, really dark." Emma's hands gripped the chair arms tighter. "I heard noises, animals, I think. Maybe owls or coyotes. I didn't know. I was so scared I couldn't even cry anymore. I just walked until I found a big bridge thing with metal, and I crawled underneath it because I thought maybe the animals wouldn't find me there." Judge Chen removed her glasses, listening intently. This wasn't just testimony. This was a child reliving trauma, and every word rang with authenticity. "I was so cold," Emma whispered. "It was summer, but at night it got cold and I only had my birthday dress. My arms and legs felt like ice. I couldn't feel my fingers, I thought." She paused, and when she continued, her voice was barely audible. "I thought maybe I was going to die there, like the princess in my storybook who fell asleep in the snow." Several jurors wiped their eyes. Officer Thompson felt his throat constrict, remembering the moment Rex had found her. So small, so cold, so close to disaster. "But then I heard something," Emma said, and suddenly her voice brightened. "I heard footsteps and a jingly sound, like the sound Rex's collar makes when he walks. And I saw a light, really bright, and I heard a man's voice say, 'Such, Rex, show me where she is.'" Sarah smiled encouragingly. "That was Officer Thompson." Emma nodded vigorously. "Yes, and then I saw Rex. He came under the bridge, and at first I was scared because he was big and it was dark, but then he did something amazing." "What did he do, Emma?" "He laid down," Emma said, her face illuminating with the memory. "He could have been scary, he could have barked really loud, but he looked at me with these really smart eyes and he just laid down next to me. Like he knew I was scared, like he knew I needed a friend." The courtroom was absolutely silent except for Emma's voice. "He was so warm," Emma continued, her hands gesturing as she spoke. "I put my arms around him and he let me. He didn't move away or get mad. He just stayed really still and kept me warm with his body. Officer Thompson came and wrapped blankets around me, but I didn't want to let go of Rex. He saved me. If he hadn't found me, if he hadn't kept me warm." She didn't finish the sentence, but everyone in the courtroom understood what she meant. Delgado finally stood, his expression carefully controlled. "Your Honor, while this is certainly a touching story, I must point out that it has no bearing on the current case. Rex's behavior 2 years ago doesn't excuse a vicious attack." "I'm not finished." Emma's voice cut through the objection with surprising force. Judge Chen raised her eyebrows but gestured for Emma to continue. Delgado sat down, looking frustrated. Emma turned to look directly at the jury, her brown eyes fierce with conviction. "Rex isn't mean. Rex isn't vicious. Rex is smart. He knows things. He knows the difference between people who need help and people who are dangerous." "Objection, Your Honor," Delgado tried again. "The witness is 8 years old. She can't possibly testify to the defendant's ability to." "He knew I needed help," Emma interrupted, her voice rising with passion. "He knew I was just a scared little girl and he was gentle with me, but he also knows when people are bad, when people want to hurt others. That's his job." Sarah Chen felt a surge of pride. This little girl was a better witness than some adults she'd worked with. "Emma, have you seen Rex since the night he found you?" "Yes," Emma's face brightened again. "Officer Thompson brings him to my school sometimes. Rex does demonstrations where he shows kids how police dogs work. He's so good with everyone. The little kids pet him and hug him, and Rex just sits there being patient and gentle. My friend Carlos has a little brother who's only 3, and he pulled Rex's tail once by accident, and Rex didn't even get mad. He just turned around and licked the baby's face. Several people in the gallery chuckled softly. Even Judge Chen's stern expression softened slightly. "Emma," Sarah said carefully, "Mr. Mitchell's lawyer says Rex is dangerous, that he attacked Mr. Mitchell without reason. What would you say to that?" Emma's expression became very serious. She looked at Delgado, then at Mitchell, who sat in his chair trying to look sympathetic but couldn't quite hide the calculation in his eyes. Then she looked at Rex, who sat at perfect attention beside Officer Thompson, his eyes locked on Emma with that intense focus unique to working dogs. "I'd say they're wrong," Emma stated firmly. "Rex only hurts people who are trying to hurt other people. That's what police dogs do. That's what makes them heroes." She pointed at Mitchell, her small finger unwavering. "Officer Thompson told me what happened that night. He said that man had a gun. He said Rex stopped him from shooting a police lady. Rex was doing his job protecting people, just like he protected me." "Objection." Delgado was on his feet, his face flushed. "The witness is repeating hearsay. She wasn't present at the warehouse incident." "Sustained," Judge Chen said, but her tone was thoughtful. "Emma, you need to stick to what you personally know, not what others told you." Emma nodded, understanding. "Okay, what I personally know is that Rex is good. He's brave and smart and gentle when he needs to be gentle and strong when he needs to be strong. He saved my life, Your Honor. And I know in my heart that he wouldn't hurt someone unless they were being really, really bad, unless they were trying to hurt someone else." Sarah stepped closer. "Emma, is there anything else you'd like to say to the court?" Emma looked at Judge Chen, then at the jury, and finally at Rex. Tears began to well up in her eyes, tears she'd been holding back throughout her testimony. "Please don't hurt him," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please don't take him away. Rex is a hero. He's my hero. If you hurt him, it's like saying it doesn't matter that he saved me. It's like saying my life doesn't matter." The emotional impact of those words hit the courtroom like a physical force. Several jurors openly wept. Officer Thompson had to look away, his own eyes burning. Even the court reporter paused, wiping her eyes before continuing to type. "He's not a monster," Emma said, her voice growing stronger again through her tears. "He's the best dog in the whole world, and if you can't see that then you're not looking hard enough." Sarah nodded, satisfied. "No further questions, Your Honor." Delgado stood slowly, recognizing he was in a minefield but required to cross-examine. "Emma, when Rex found you, was he on a leash?" "Yes, Officer Thompson had him on a leash." "So he was under complete control?" "Yes." "And in the warehouse, according to reports, Rex wasn't on a leash when he attacked my client. Doesn't that make it different?" Emma frowned, thinking carefully. "I don't think so. Police dogs train to know when to stop bad people. Officer Thompson can't always hold the leash when Rex needs to move fast to save someone. That's why they train so much, so Rex knows what to do even without a leash." Delgado realized he wasn't going to shake this witness. No further questions. As Emma climbed down from the witness stand, something unexpected happened. She didn't return to her mother. Instead, she walked directly toward Rex. The courtroom held its collective breath as Emma stepped down from the witness stand. The bailiff moved to guide her back to the gallery, but Emma had other plans. Her small feet carried her with unwavering purpose across the polished marble floor, directly toward the defense table where Officer Thompson sat with Rex. "Emma, honey," Maria called softly from the gallery, uncertain. "Come back to Mama." But Emma didn't stop. She didn't even look back. Her eyes were locked on Rex, the dog who had saved her life, the hero who now faced execution because the world didn't understand him the way she did. Judge Chen leaned forward, her hand hovering over her gavel, but something stopped her from intervening. There was a solemnity to Emma's movement, a sense of purpose that transcended courtroom protocol. This little girl was on a mission, and the judge wanted to see where it led. Sarah Chen started to object to her own witness-breaking procedure but caught herself. Sometimes, she realized, justice happened outside the boundaries of legal protocol. Sometimes truth required something more than testimony. It required action. Delgado sensed his control of the narrative slipping. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. The witness should return to her seat immediately. This appears to be a calculated attempt to—" "Mr. Delgado," Judge Chen's voice was soft but carried the weight of absolute authority. "Be quiet." The lawyer's mouth snapped shut. In 20 years of practice, he'd never heard Judge Chen speak with quite that tone. Emma reached the defense table. Officer Thompson looked down at her, confusion and hope warring on his face. Rex, who had maintained his perfect sitting position throughout the entire trial, began to tremble slightly. His tail wanted to wag. His entire body wanted to surge forward to greet his young friend. But years of training held him in place. He was working, and working dogs didn't break position. Except Emma knew Rex in a way that transcended his training. "Officer Thompson," Emma said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her cheeks, May I hug Rex?" Thompson's throat tightened. He looked at Judge Chen, seeking permission for something he had no right to grant in a courtroom. The judge, her own eyes glistening suspiciously, gave a barely perceptible nod. "Yes, Emma," Thompson said, his voice rough. "Yes, you can." Emma turned to Rex, and something magical happened. The German shepherd, who had sat motionless through hours of testimony, who had ignored shouting and accusations and the hostile energy that had filled the room, recognized that this moment was different. This moment mattered. Emma knelt down on the courtroom floor, her pink dress pooling around her, and opened her arms. Rex moved forward, his movements careful and gentle, as if he understood the fragility of this moment. He pressed his head against Emma's chest, and the little girl wrapped her arms around his neck, just as she had done 2 years ago under that railway bridge when she'd been cold and scared and alone. The courtroom watched in absolute silence. Hardened police officers who'd seen the worst of humanity wiped their eyes. Jurors who'd spent 3 days trying to remain impartial found tears rolling down their cheeks. Even the court reporter's fingers stilled on her keys, forgetting to record because she was too busy watching something that transcended documentation. Emma buried her face in Rex's fur, her small body shaking with sobs. "I'm here, Rex," she whispered, though the courtroom was so quiet that everyone heard her. "I'm here and I won't let them hurt you. You saved me and now I'm going to save you." Rex remained perfectly still, but his eyes closed as Emma held him. If a dog could understand human words, if a dog could comprehend the love and loyalty being offered in this moment, Rex understood. His tail, which had been still, began to wag slowly, a gentle metronome of happiness. Maria Rodriguez sobbed openly in the gallery. Carlos held her, his own face wet with tears. Around them, people who'd come to this courthouse with fixed opinions, with predetermined beliefs about dangerous dogs and police overreach, found those certainties crumbling in the face of a child's love. Emma pulled back slightly, keeping her arms around Rex's neck, and turned to face Judge Chen. Her face was streaked with tears, her eyes red and puffy, but her gaze was strong and clear and absolutely unwavering. "Your Honor," Emma said, her voice trembling but determined, "I need to say something else." Judge Chen nodded, incapable of speech herself. Emma looked at the jury, at Delgado, at Mitchell, who was trying to maintain his victim expression but failing, at the packed gallery of spectators and reporters and protesters. She looked at Officer Thompson, whose hand was pressed against his mouth as he fought to maintain composure. And then she looked back at Rex, this magnificent animal who had saved her life, and asked nothing in return. Emma pressed her forehead against Rex's, a gesture of pure love and absolute trust. The German shepherd's tail wagged faster, and a small whine of happiness escaped his throat, the first sound he'd made since entering the courtroom. And then, with her arms still wrapped around Rex's neck, with her face pressed against his fur, with the tears flowing freely, Emma spoke 2 words. Just 2 words. But they carried more weight than all the legal arguments, all the expert testimony, all the carefully constructed narratives that had filled 3 days of trial. Looking directly at Judge Chen, Emma said, "Good boy." The courtroom erupted. Not in chaos, but in emotion, raw, unfiltered, undeniable emotion. The words hit like a thunderclap. Good boy. The simplest praise a dog could receive. The fundamental acknowledgement of worth and goodness. And coming from this little girl, this child whose life Rex had saved, these 2 words demolished every argument the prosecution had carefully constructed. Because good boy wasn't just praise. It was a character statement. It was testimony. It was truth spoken with such pure conviction that it couldn't be cross-examined or objected to or dismissed. Judge Chen's hand trembled as she removed her glasses. Tears rolled freely down her face, and she didn't bother to hide them. In 23 years on the bench, she'd heard thousands of hours of testimony, seen mountains of evidence, presided over cases that involved millions of dollars and life-altering decisions. But she had never, ever witnessed anything like this. Delgado sank into his chair, recognizing defeat when he saw it. He was good at his job, excellent, actually. But there was no legal maneuver that could counter this moment. No objection that wouldn't make him look like a monster. No cross-examination that could diminish what the entire courtroom had just witnessed. Mitchell shifted uncomfortably, his calculated victim persona cracking. Even he, despite his self-interest, couldn't watch this scene without feeling something. Guilt, perhaps, or shame, or the uncomfortable recognition that he'd tried to destroy something good and pure for his own benefit. Rex remained perfectly still in Emma's embrace, his tail wagging steadily, his eyes half-closed in contentment. This was what he'd been bred for, not aggression, not violence, but service, protection, love, being a good boy in every sense that mattered. Officer Thompson finally lost his composure entirely. He doubled over, his hands covering his face as sobs racked his body. His partner, his friend, his hero, was being saved by a little girl who understood something that adults had forgotten. That goodness isn't complicated. That loyalty doesn't require legal definition. That sometimes, just sometimes, the truth can be spoken in 2 simple words. Emma held Rex tighter, and Rex gently licked her cheek. A gesture of affection that had been captured by every camera in the courtroom, a moment that would be replayed on news channels across the country, an image that would define this case more than any legal brief ever could. "Good boy," Emma whispered again, and this time it was just for Rex. "You're such a good boy and everyone's going to know it now, I promise." Judge Chen reached for her gavel with a shaking hand, but she didn't strike it. Not yet. She needed a moment to compose herself, to let this moment breathe, to acknowledge that something profound had just occurred in her courtroom, something that would stay with her for the rest of her life. The 2 words hung in the air like a benediction, "Good boy." And everything changed. Judge Margaret Chen sat motionless at her bench, her gavel still in hand, watching as Emma slowly released her embrace of Rex and returned to her mother's arms in the gallery. The little girl's words echoed in the profound silence that had fallen over the courtroom. Good boy. 2 simple words that had stripped away layers of legal complexity and revealed the fundamental truth at the heart of this case. The judge took a deep breath, replaced her glasses, and surveyed the courtroom. Every eye was fixed on her, waiting. Outside, the protesters had gone quiet, as if they too sensed that something momentous was about to occur. This wasn't just a ruling about one dog. It was a statement about justice, about truth, about what society valued. "We will take a 30-minute recess," Judge Chen announced, her voice still thick with emotion. "When we return, I will deliver my ruling." The gavel cracked and the courtroom erupted into motion. Reporters sprinted for the exits, desperate to file updates. Officers surrounded Thompson and Rex, offering support and hope. Maria Rodriguez held Emma close, whispering prayers in Spanish. And Marcus Delgado sat at his table, staring at his notes, knowing that all his carefully constructed arguments had been demolished by a child's love. In her chambers, Judge Chen poured herself a glass of water with trembling hands. She'd known from the opening arguments what her ruling should be, but she needed to hear all the evidence, needed to give both sides their day in court. Now, having witnessed Emma's testimony, having seen the pure bond between that child and that dog, her duty was crystal clear. She pulled up Rex's complete file on her computer, every call he'd responded to, every arrest, every community service event. 47 successful drug busts, 12 missing persons found, including Emma Rodriguez, hundreds of hours in schools and community centers, never a single complaint, 0 incidents of aggression toward civilians. The record was impeccable. Then she reviewed the warehouse incident footage, not the missing security footage, but something better. Her subpoena of the building management company's backup servers had revealed what Delgado claimed didn't exist. The timestamp showed everything. Mitchell emerging from hiding with his Glock 9 raised, Officer Park in his sights. Rex launching forward in response to a direct threat, the weapon discharging as Mitchell fell. It was textbook K-9 deployment. Rex had done exactly what he was trained to do, neutralize an armed suspect to protect human life. Judge Chen also pulled up Mitchell's criminal record: 3 prior arrests for armed robbery, 2 assault charges, a restraining order from an ex-girlfriend who claimed he'd threatened her with a weapon. This wasn't an innocent man wrongly attacked. This was a career criminal who'd found a lawyer clever enough to turn his own crime into a payday. The judge made her decision, then she made a phone call. When court reconvened, the tension was electric. Thompson sat with his hand on Rex's head, the dog's presence giving him strength. Emma clutched her mother's hand, her other hand holding a small stuffed rabbit, the same one Rex had used to track her scent 2 years ago. Delgado shuffled papers with false confidence, while Mitchell maintained his victim expression, though his eyes kept darting nervously toward the judge. "All rise," the bailiff commanded. Judge Chen entered and took her seat, her expression unreadable. She adjusted her glasses and looked out over the courtroom with the authority of someone who'd spent 2 decades interpreting the law. "I have reviewed all testimony and evidence presented in this case," she began, her voice measured and clear. "I have examined Rex's complete service record, witness statements, and—" she paused, fixing Delgado with a pointed stare, "security footage from the warehouse incident that was recently recovered from backup servers." Delgado's face went pale. Mitchell shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "The footage clearly shows Mr. Mitchell emerging from concealment with a loaded firearm, pointing said weapon at Officer Jennifer Park, and Rex responding to an immediate lethal threat." Judge Chen's voice grew harder. "Mr. Mitchell, you weren't surrendering. You were attempting to murder a police officer." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Mitchell started to protest, but his lawyer grabbed his arm, silencing him. "As for Rex," Judge Chen continued, and the courtroom went completely silent, "I have reviewed his entire service record. 12 missing persons found, 47 successful drug interdictions, countless hours of community service, and most importantly," her voice softened as she looked at Emma, "a little girl whose life he saved with gentleness and compassion." Emma squeezed her mother's hand tighter. "Rex is not a vicious animal. Rex is not a threat to public safety. Rex is a highly trained police service dog who performed his duty exactly as he was trained to do, protecting human life from an armed and dangerous criminal." Judge Chen's gavel hand rose. "The motion to declare Rex dangerous is hereby denied. All charges against Rex are dismissed with prejudice." The courtroom exploded. Officers leapt to their feet, cheering and embracing. Thompson collapsed forward, his arms around Rex, sobbing with relief. Emma jumped up and down, screaming with joy. Maria and Carlos held each other, tears streaming down their faces. Even some of the jurors applauded, forgetting their neutrality in the face of such obvious justice. But Judge Chen wasn't finished. Her gavel cracked sharply, demanding silence. Furthermore, she continued, her voice cutting through the celebration like steel, I am referring this case to the district attorney for investigation of perjury, evidence tampering, and filing a false police report. Mr. Mitchell, the security footage shows you firing at police officers before Rex engaged. That's attempted murder of a law enforcement officer. Mitchell's face drained of all color. Delgado was already gathering his papers, recognizing the sinking ship. Mr. Delgado, Judge Chen addressed the lawyer directly, I suggest you be more careful about which clients you choose to represent and which cases you choose to pursue. This court does not look kindly on attempts to manipulate justice for financial gain. Delgado said nothing, his legendary confidence shattered. However, Judge Chen's voice softened again, I am also issuing an order that will hopefully prevent similar incidents in the future. The police department will implement enhanced K-9 training protocols, including mandatory body camera redundancy and third-party behavioral evaluations every 6 months for all service dogs. Thompson nodded vigorously. It was more than fair. It was smart policy that would protect both dogs and the community. Rex will undergo a behavioral evaluation by an independent veterinary behaviorist within 30 days, Judge Chen continued. But I have no doubt he will pass with flying colors. Based on everything I've seen, Rex is exactly what Officer Thompson and young Emma have said he is, a hero. The judge looked directly at Emma, who stood between her parents, tears of joy streaming down her face. Young lady, you showed remarkable courage coming here today. You reminded this court and this community that sometimes the simplest truths are the most powerful ones. Thank you. Emma beamed through her tears. Judge Chen raised her gavel one final time. This court is adjourned. The crack of the gavel was drowned out by cheers that shook the courthouse. Officers swarmed Thompson and Rex. News cameras captured everything. Emma broke free from her parents and ran to Rex, throwing her arms around him once more. You're safe, she cried. You're safe, Rex, you're going to be okay. Rex's tail wagged furiously as he gently licked Emma's face, his dark eyes shining with something that looked remarkably like gratitude. Outside the courthouse, protesters who'd come to demand Rex's death quietly dispersed, many of them reconsidering their positions. Those who'd come to support Rex celebrated loudly, their cheers echoing through the downtown streets. Inside, as the courtroom slowly emptied, Officer Thompson knelt beside Rex and Emma, one hand on his partner, one hand on the little girl's shoulder. Thank you, he whispered to Emma. You saved him. You saved my partner. Emma looked up at him with those wise brown eyes. He saved me first, she said simply. That's what heroes do. They save each other. And in that moment, everyone present understood that justice had truly been served. The autumn sun painted golden streaks across the Jefferson County K-9 training facility, as Officer Mike Thompson watched Rex complete his obstacle course with the same precision and grace that had defined his entire career. The German Shepherd cleared the final jump, executed a perfect recall, and sat at attention before the independent veterinary behaviorist, Dr. Patricia Williams, who'd been observing every movement with clinical expertise. Dr. Williams made a final note on her clipboard, then looked up with a smile. Officer Thompson, in 20 years of evaluating working dogs, I've rarely seen one with Rex's level of control and discernment. His bite inhibition is textbook perfect, his stress responses are completely appropriate, and his ability to differentiate between threats and non-threats is exceptional. She stamped the evaluation form with a decisive thud. Rex passes with the highest marks possible. This dog is not only safe, he's extraordinary. Thompson felt tension he'd been carrying for 6 months finally released from his shoulders. Even though Judge Chen's ruling had cleared Rex, the independent evaluation had been required. Now it was official. Rex was going back to active duty. "Welcome back, partner," Thompson whispered, kneeling down to embrace his dog. Rex's tail wagged with such enthusiasm that his entire back half wiggled. The next week, a ceremony was held at Riverside Park, the same park where Rex had found Emma 2 years ago. The mayor had declared it K9 Appreciation Day, and hundreds of people filled the pavilion area. Local news crews set up their cameras while children played on the playground where Emma had once disappeared. Thompson stood on the temporary stage in his dress uniform, Rex sitting perfectly at his side. Beside them stood Emma Rodriguez, now 9 years old, wearing a pretty blue dress and holding that same stuffed rabbit that had started everything. Mayor Robert Davidson approached the podium, his voice booming through the speakers. "Today, we're here to recognize 2 individuals who reminded our community what true courage looks like. They showed us that heroism isn't about size or age. It's about heart, loyalty, and standing up for what's right." The crowd applauded as the mayor turned to Emma. "Young lady, your bravery in that courtroom changed not just one life, but influenced policy changes that will protect working dogs across 15 states. Because of you, K9 officers now have better legal protections, enhanced training protocols, and stronger community support." Emma blushed as the mayor placed a gold medal around her neck, the Community Service Award, the youngest recipient in the city's history. "And Rex," the mayor continued, kneeling down to the dog's level, "you've served this community with distinction for 7 years. 12 missing persons found, 53 successful operations, countless lives protected. But more than that, you've shown us that the bond between humans and animals can be powerful enough to change hearts and minds." He placed a matching medal on Rex's collar. The German Shepherd's tail wagged once, dignified and proud, as cameras flashed and the crowd erupted in cheers. But the best part came after the ceremony. Thompson had arranged for something special. With the help of the school district and the police department's community outreach program, Rex was now an official reading buddy at Emma's elementary school. Every Friday afternoon, Rex visited Riverside Elementary, and children who struggled with reading could sit with him and read aloud. The first Friday session was magical. Thompson led Rex into the school library where 20 children waited, their faces lighting up when they saw the famous hero dog. Emma sat in the front, appointed as Rex's official helper, a role she took incredibly seriously. "Remember," Emma instructed the other children with the authority of someone who'd saved a hero's life, "Rex is really good at listening. He won't laugh if you make mistakes. He just wants to hear stories." One by one, children settled beside Rex, opening their books and reading aloud. A shy first grader named Marcus, who rarely spoke in class, sat pressed against Rex's side and haltingly read through a picture book about dinosaurs. Rex remained perfectly still, his presence giving the boy confidence. By the end of the session, Marcus was reading with enthusiasm, one hand buried in Rex's fur. "This is incredible," Principal Henderson whispered to Thompson. "We've been trying to help Marcus open up for months. 10 minutes with Rex and he's a different child." Thompson smiled, watching Emma guide another student to Rex's other side. "That's what Rex does. He helps people, always has." The story of Emma and Rex went viral, exactly as Judge Chen had hoped it would. News outlets across the country picked it up. "Little girl saves police dog" became more than a headline, it became a movement. Communities began reevaluating their K9 programs, implementing better protections for working dogs. Congress introduced the Rex Act, legislation providing federal guidelines for police service animals and protecting them from frivolous legal attacks. Mitchell was convicted of attempted murder and weapons charges. Delgado faced sanctions from the state bar for his role in the evidence tampering. But more importantly, the trial had exposed flaws in how working dogs were protected legally, and those flaws were being corrected. Thompson continued to bring Rex to schools, community centers, and public events. Everywhere they went, people wanted to meet the famous dog and the little girl who'd saved him. Emma handled her sudden fame with remarkable grace, always insisting that she wasn't special. Rex was special, and she just told the truth. On quiet evenings, Thompson sometimes brought Rex to visit the Rodriguez family. They'd have dinner together, and afterward, Emma would sit on the back porch with Rex, reading him her favorite books while the adults talked inside. Rex would rest his head on her lap, content and peaceful, while Emma's voice wove stories about princesses and dragons and heroes who saved the day. "You know what, Rex?" Emma said one evening, closing her book and looking into the dog's intelligent eyes. "Officer Thompson says you're going to retire in a few years. When you do, I'm going to ask my parents if you can visit every single day. Would you like that?" Rex's tail thumped against the porch, a clear answer. "Good," Emma said, wrapping her arms around his neck in that familiar embrace that had saved his life. "Because you're my best friend and best friends should be together." She pressed her forehead against his and whispered those two words that had changed everything, words she'd say to him countless more times over the years to come. "Good boy." Rex closed his eyes, surrounded by love, and knew with the certainty that only dogs possess that he was exactly where he belonged. He'd spent his life saving others, and when he'd needed it most, the smallest and bravest person he'd ever known had saved him right back. "That's what heroes do," Emma had said. "They save each other." And she was absolutely right. The end.